Namaste. Welcome to our Satsang. First, I of course have a commercial. On the 20th, we'll be celebrating Easter, the resurrection of Christ. This year, both East and West are celebrating on the same date. It'd be too long to go into why there's a difference, but there is. And always, Yogananda at the Easter time would urge people to see Cecil B. DeMille's silent motion picture, The King of Kings. And in fact, one of the monks told me that they used to look at a newspaper to see where there might be a notice that a church was going to show this at around Easter time. And the monks would go. And very often, since they came in a group, they got noticed. And often it was quite evangelical. And so there would be an attempt to get them saved as, I guess, the admission price. Fortunately, when I was there was what we call the old-time movie house on Fairfax Avenue. It's gone, unfortunately, where I saw many remarkable silent movies. And all through Holy Week, they would show DeMille's silent King of Kings. And at the SRF Church, it would be mentioned, and many people would go to see it. And it is really amazing. DeMille was asked, how are you with a Jewish background? Have you been able to make such an ideal and moving and inspiring motion picture of the life of Jesus? And he said, I studied the lives of Buddha, Zoroaster, Krishna, and Zoroaster. And I made the motion picture as if he was one of those. Isn't that amazing? Yogananda's influence is there twice in the motion picture in the visuals, but I don't think I can explain it well enough. So I'm just tantalizing you by telling you this. But it's really quite wonderful. And you can see it at home in this video, which you can order online, and is amazing. Now, I'm wanting to show you, yes, this, if you want to look at it on YouTube, this is what you want to see. All right? I'll hold that there for a while. Because, there are always fools that, because they're fools, do not see the value of even something that's perfect. So they have to make their own version that they think is an improvement, which is always a complete mucking up of it, because that's their mentality. There are some people in the world to build up and some that are here to tear down, and these people make a mess of things. And they have put soundtracks of their own, and just some of them are just ruining the movie. So this has the sound that DeMille used, and this is the version you can see that was shown in the theaters. I do believe that there's an option there to see 2 or 3 different versions, and the best is the theater version. All right. A very important book I want to talk about. You see, in Sanatana Dharma, there are a tremendous number of terms that are absolutely important, because they're very specific, they're very technical, and they help you understand. That's why in the back of every one of my books, you find a long glossary, because talking about these things, you really do, if you're going to do it in a classical manner, you have to use them. But a very remarkable man named Max Heindel, Heindel, who was the head of the Rosicrucian Fellowship in Oceanside, California. This is not the AMORC Rosicrucians, I think San Jose, California. They're the biggest and best known, but this is a smaller group. If you're in that area, I recommend phoning them up and going for a visit. These are very remarkably fine people with great wisdom. And he wrote a book called The Rosicrucian Cosmo-Conception. It's rather a ponderous title, but it's very accurate. And this book presents, and it says on the title page, the Rosicrucian Cosmo-Conception, or mystic Christianity. Well, real Christianity and Sanatana Dharma happen to be the same. What we call Christianity is a hideous blasphemy and deformation of Christ's teachings. But anyway, that which is true Christianity is true Sanatana Dharma. Though I'd reverse it and say true Sanatana Dharma is true Christianity. This book presents an outline. It's over 500 pages of real Sanatana Dharma with not one technical term, not one Sanskrit word, not one Greek word, not one Latin word. How did he do it? Well, he was a divinely inspired man, obviously. And therefore, I really, really recommend this to you. Because it's a good thing to give to your friends. That is, if they're literate and really interested. Because it will present this beautifully. In fact, it presents Sanatana Dharma so well that when the first edition, which was sold out very quickly, was gone, he printed a second edition, and the Theosophical Society of California contacted him and asked to buy the entire second edition, which they did, and then he reprinted it again. But the Theosophical Society had it circulated throughout California because it is such a marvelous presentation with all English words, and not done in a chauvinistic way, but because it helps people to get the idea better. All right, so that is, I think, the end of the commercial. Sorry for me to be so choppy, but for those of you who know astrology, I have Gemini rising, and that means my mind is all around in every direction continually. All right, fine. Now we're ready for our questions. And I've not remembered to set the timer. So, of course, we'll, as in Alice in Wonderland, she's told, begin at the beginning, and when you get to the end, stop. So I will. Okay, fine. This is asked the second time. I thought I had answered before. All right. What have you heard or do you know about Sivananda being married? Sivananda was married and had 2 children. His wife and his children were killed in a fire. And anything about them as people or any idea about his life at that time, he was a physician, you see. He was Dr. Kupaswamy and very successful. And this event took place. How long later before he took sannyas, that, as I say, I know nothing about it. Okay. Can you discuss sound and breath and also the subtle breath? Well, I really do recommend Soham Yoga for that subject. I mean, I urge you to get it for that subject. However, we'll talk a bit. Sound, Shabda, is the basis of all existence. It is essentially consciousness and is also a configurer, a shaper of consciousness. That's a big subject. We'll have to let that just sort of lie there out in the ether. But so it is. It's the basis of everything. In the beginning was the word, vak, speech, the spoken word. In the beginning, in the Gospels, St. John is quoting some of the Rig Veda sort of Upashastras, scriptures attached to the Veda, that say, in the beginning was Prajapati, that is the creator. And the Vakya, the word, was with Prajapati, and Prajapati verily was that word. So first it was there in a potential form. It is the consciousness of God. Then this became the basis of all creation because duality is an absolute necessity for manifestation of anything. So there immediately began a movement, a spanda, an expansion. And it was an alternating current. It didn't move like this, or like that, or that. It literally went like that. Well, back and forth. And every atom has two poles, and all the particles of the atom and the particles of a molecule, the atoms in a molecule, they all move around that axis in a very definite pattern. And that's why we get all the various types of things that exist, and especially the elements. So this goes, and it's, I say, dualistic. And it turns back on itself. See, if I go like that and that, that's not the idea. It's a circle. The beginning and the end become the same. We have the Western esoteric symbol of the so-called worm Ouroboros, that there's his head and then the end of his tail is in his mouth. And it's said that he continually swallows and devours himself, but in the swallowing and devouring, the head keeps also moving backwards, and therefore it never ends, and it never is less than that. That sounds pretty obscure, but it happens to be a good symbol. Therefore, this is a perpetual and a potentially eternal movement. And the movement and the sound are the same thing. And things breathe. Plants breathe. They breathe out oxygen. We breathe out carbon dioxide, and the plants take it, and then they reprocess it. Back it goes. Recycling from the very beginning of relative existence, at least earthly relative existence. So then, this manifests in the individual as the breath. When in England, they had a little ditty they would say, always eat when you're hungry, always drink when you're dry, always sleep when you're sleepy, and don't stop breathing or you'll die. A little bit macabre, but So it's the basis of life. It's the basis of all manifestation. So in the human being, this is the dominant cause, virtually, of all that is ultimately built up in manifestation. And in the living being, animal being, there's inhaling and exhaling. The inhaling sound makes a psychic vibration, which in human speech is translated as so. And the actual spoken word has the very vibration of that original movement. So there is a sound of so when we inhale and a sound of hum when we exhale. The sound is both the producer of the movement of the breath and is itself the breath and is the sound of the breath. In other words, it's all encompassing. And it's also the basis of the very objective lung movement breath. But as you practice Soham sadhana, Soham meditation correctly, then you become more and more aware of the subtle reality, the subtle movement, the subtle sound that is produced. Now, I don't mean you sit passively and hypnotize yourself into thinking that you're hearing it. This is one of the things the ego will try, because if you're just sitting like, oh yes, I can hear the great divine sound, you're just a lump and you're not producing any effect in yourself, and therefore is no benefit, and you can stay just as impacted a lump of clay in your brain as you were before you started. The ego has many, many ways of being able to say, no, I'm going to do that. People write, oh, couldn't I say Omsa, one person suggested. Couldn't I say this? Couldn't I say that? Yes, do anything you want. You know, if you're not free to be a fool, you're not free to be wise. So it's ignorant and it's foolish and it's self-destructive. But I have only one life to live, my life. So wreck your life if you want. I don't care. I really don't. Oh my goodness. So, anyhow, the yogi is aware of these two syllables, so, hum, and therefore is aware of the breath, whether they're meditating or not in their daily activities. It's like a stop and go light, in a sense, for the yogi. And so when the breath comes in, mentally intones, it's always mentally, so, doesn't matter what pitch it is, whatever comes naturally, so, and when you breathe out, hum, so, hum, so, hum. Doesn't matter if it's short, doesn't matter if it's long. Don't mess with it. Relax and let it be completely natural. That is also very, very essential. Ultimately, if you practice and you practice long enough, and you don't counteract your practice by your daily life, especially your diet, and a very true observance of the principles of yama, niyama, and morality, then everything will go right and you will experience all these things. Could I describe it to you? No, because I'm glad to tell you that real meditation in a short while takes you beyond any experience you've ever had. Now, don't think it's going to be like, oh, suddenly I was as big as the cosmos. You can describe that. If you can put it into words, it's a very elementary experience. Doesn't mean it's a bad experience or a wrong experience. But if you can explain it, And if you can describe it, it's very, very superficial. And you're just getting your toes wet, not even your whole feet wet, if things don't go beyond that. So it's everything. In other words, in this thing, every atom in this is moving to the sound, to the rhythm of Sohum. This is Sohum. The breath, we say the breath makes the sound of Sohum. That's true. But the sound of Sohum also produces the process of breath. They're interdependent. This is just the way it is. There's a unity, you see. So this practice reveals everything. And fortunately, all reveals the thing that you really need. It won't tell you whether there's life on Venus or not. If you get contacted by Space Brothers, you're doing it wrong. So, okay, I hope I did that. All right. Let me read this. And so I find that in order to get lost in Sohum, I must intone in a context of love and compassion that comes from thinking about the struggles and glory of Jesus or the life of Ramakrishna. Otherwise, it is too dry and abstract. Having noticed this, I do it. But then I feel as if I were sly or calculating, possibly misusing love. Can you talk about this? Okay. There's dhyana, which is meditation, and there's manana, that's fooling around with the mind. There are people who say, when I sit to meditate, I imagine, I am with Arjuna sitting in the chariot and it's a battlefield and Krishna's there speaking. Or people say, I feel that I'm standing by a road in Israel and here comes a crowd and Jesus is walking by with the disciples. So I'm not mocking this. But it's not meditation. It is manana. It's fiddling with the mind. Also, bhava, attitude. I feel this way, that I feel love, I feel peace, I feel expansion. Deliberately trying expansion, you will feel many things. But to do it and produce it is bhava. It's mood. It's just making a mood. And it is completely, irrevocably tied with the lower mind and the lower intellect, because we have lower levels of that too. And it will prevent the experience of the pure consciousness that is the self. But if you like it and it entertains you, it's all right with me. People write and say, couldn't I say this instead of that? Couldn't I think of it this way? Couldn't I visualize? Couldn't I think it's this place in my body and so on? I always write back and say, you're in charge of your life. You're in charge of your meditation. Follow your intuition. What else can I say? I'm not here to boss you. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I mean, I can guarantee you that. Thank God you and I both have a lot more important to do with our life than to look after other people. So why am I even saying these things? Because it happens to be my swadharma to do so. And please don't write and ask me to explain swadharma, at least not right now. Okay, so you see, to get a feeling, to get an attitude even, it's a great mistake. You're beyond that. You're beyond attitudes. You're even beyond perspectives. You are that. Tat Twamasi. You are the absolute spirit. And you're bound, you're locked in they let people in the old days, foolhardy people, thought of ways to go over Niagara Falls. And a lot of them would try to go over in a great big rubber ball. Well, you can try it, but usually death can result. So do as you like, but there's only one right way to do it. How dogmatic. All right. Is dreaming an experience of the bardo? Well, you see, we are a little cosmos. So our subconscious and our astral levels and our causal levels are a perfect miniature copy of the whole range of existence. So all the lower worlds, whether it's heaven or hell, they're all in us. And therefore, since after death we go to these places, so sleep has been called the little death. So, in a sense, since dreams come from the subconscious, it does come from the equivalent of what in the big C you could call the bardo. I hope I'm not being too convoluted about that. Please describe the difference between Sanatana Dharma and the Bible with regard to how each perceives future prophecy, parenthesis, eschatology, or the story we're experiencing, ends. Sanatana Dharma simply says, creation goes in cycles. It is projected, it's withdrawn. It's projected, it's withdrawn. And it all reflects the karma, the karmic forces generated in the previous creation. And that's it. There's nothing about Jesus is coming back, Krishna is coming back. Oh yes, one day the great pranava will vibrate and everyone will be enveloped in great light, and that's going to happen in 2,813 days. That has nothing to do with Sanatana Dharma. That has to do with a religion that never frees you from this world, but actually ties you into this world. The future of this world means nothing. What is the future of you as a divine self, as an Atman? I was going to say on the path to God, but are you on the path to God? There's the eschatology you need. Walk the path that will end in the infinite. Not heaven, not hell, but the infinity of being. Because, Tatvamasi, thou art that. Right? Shastras recommends forget and forgive. Well, they don't. I've never read anything similar like that in my life, and I've been studying Shastras since for now 64 years. So you should not resent, you should not feel bitterness, but it's not forgive and forget and forget and forgive. It is paying attention to what's real and forgetting the fever dream that you're in. It happened. You watch a motion picture. People die in it. People win wars in it. But none of it really happened. You and I are in an educational movie. And all this happens and does not happen at the same time. Only the yogi can really come to comprehend what I'm saying about this. So the letting go and so on. And then universal principles like compassion and love. What do you and I know? First of all, how do you know it's a universal principle? What love is ultimately is a positive vibration which draws the object of love into communion and to touching or even union with the one doing the love. Now, please don't interpret this in the ways of human beings loving each other. That isn't even a getting down on the floor and playing like a child. That's just rolling in the mud. Aren't I dogmatic? But it's true. And these are just ideas. These are little human petty pretensions. Even if they're a reflection, like you take a head of a pen and it reflects, say, a whole mountain. Well, okay, fine, but it isn't the mountain and it doesn't have a relation with the mountain. So all of these human ideas should be abrogated by the awareness Sohum. So means that, not he. The absolute reality is not male or female, has no polarity. That hum, I am. I am that. That am I, or that is me. It's a two-way street. So that's what we're after. Experience of divinity. Not loving an object, feeling sorry for an object. Compassion and love will be in any truly developed person. But they're not artificial. You can't do it. I actually had a man one time say to me, who came for a visit, I've been working a lot on being more spontaneous. Well, if you're working on it and you're saying, and now, blah, 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 it isn't spontaneous, is it? Because spontaneous is, it just takes place with no thought, with no intention or anything. It just becomes, it's a natural expression. So it's a silly idea, you see. But we're silly. That's why we come back over and over again. We flunk the grade over and over again, and it's all in our consciousness. And we're the reason why. Okay, Soham, well, S-O-H-A-M or S-O-H-U-M. S-O-H-A-M is the transliteration of the Sanskrit. And in Sanskrit, the letter, which we write as A, has two forms, short A, or long A, ah. Sometimes in modern times when people write words and it's like, say, a word with a long A, they'll put two A's, which I'm sure, since I've never come across it where they explained at the beginning what it meant, I'm sure it confuses people. So we write it that way because that's how it is in the Sanskrit text, with an A. And if we've learned anything, we know that it's a. See, tapasya, T-A-P-A-S-Y-A. And every one we say, Others, we put, like we say, Shastra. The A is not Shastra. So it is. I've heard some very funny things spoken by people who thought they were being very correct with Sanskrit. So anyway, Soham is the mantric version. S-O-H-A-M is just the way we traditionally write it. But a person could always write it S-O-H-U-M if they liked. I wouldn't personally call one more correct than the other. The thing is, are you getting effect out of it and what does it do? Okay. Sorry, I'm just checking on the time. Not that I'm bored and want to leave you, but the truth is I have just very little left. Okay. We hear and read a lot about incarnations, yogis, and saints who materialized during the 20th century. but little about the same happening in the 21st century. Are there any now that you would suggest meeting or giving time to? Well, you see, because of various situations, because of my age, because of my health, it's been quite a long while since I've been back to India, which I regret every day because I love it, and I hope that one day before the end of my life, I will see Bharat again. But who knows what will happen. So I was last there, I'm no good with numbers. Maybe it was in the 1980s. Something like that. I'm sorry, I don't know. And so it's been that long a time. So I have no idea what's happening. There came to mind a certain person, but then I realized that I think that some of our ashram members encountered him maybe 20 years or more ago. And considering his age then, I expect he's not alive. And anyway, he's a true not yogi, and he would be very annoyed if somebody showed up and said, oh, Swami Nirmalananda told me to come see you. Therefore, I don't know of anyone. I am sad to say, I think I have to be, in all honesty, tell you this, that I look a lot on YouTube. In fact, I look every day on YouTube and look at postings that are from India. Some of whom are very, very good. There is a man named J, period, it's initial, J Sai, S-A-I, Deepak, D-E-E-P-A-K. His discourses are marvelous. Now, some of them are very technical, and some of them are only relevant to, say, the political situation in India, but he also talks about others. He is a genuine sadhaka, a genuine yogi. He's quite remarkable. And there are some others as well. And again, you just have to use your discrimination. Some know what they're saying and some don't. Some only part of what they say is on target, is not. But so do look and see. I will say that every single contemporary person I have seen that I've opened up and watched the video, I was very disappointed. Very disappointed. In fact, and it was this way back when I went there, there were people who were in very high positions. Men had a lot of money, big organization. Well, our English word dud is just positively the most accurate that I could come up with as a technical term. They were just duds. Utter duds. I mentioned a little bit about how one who was very famous and very rich, and he came and he gave a talk at Anandamayi ashram, and somebody asked him a question, and he gave an answer, and Anandamayi Ma was sitting there, said to him, no one could give an answer like that except someone who knew nothing about the subject. Yes, there was great consternation because you understand, you've been taught that mother is happy and content under all situations, and oh, my dear. Listen, when mother decided to get out the Gatling gun, she got it out. And a lot of people got shot between the eyes. A lot of mother's kindness was indifferent. She didn't give a damn. So people would come and say, oh, yes, mother, I'm so-and-so, and I'm teaching, in one ear and out the ear yoga. And Mom would say, cha, 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 smile, the way they went. If you weren't serious in your spiritual life, Ma didn't take you seriously either. You couldn't fool Ma. Not a dot. I remember one time Sri K. Bose, he was the general manager director of the entire Anandamayi Sangha, ideal devotee of Ma. Really a great man on every level. And one time in Benares, he translated for me. And he said to me at the end, Ma talked to me for an hour and a half. And giving me lots of instructions and so on. Of course, I'd ask certain questions, but there are a lot of her own volition she talked about. And he said, sitting here today, and you understand he had been traveling with Ma and knowing Ma since he was a child. And at that time, I don't know, maybe he's in his early 40s. Could have been 50s. He said, sitting here today with you, I have heard from Ma's lips things I've never heard her say before. Why? Because Ma knew what you needed, and if you were willing, she would tell you what you needed. But if you weren't willing, she didn't tell you what you didn't want to hear. Dealing with Ma was not easy because you had to keep looking at your ego and saying, am I giving signals to Ma? And because it'll be my decision whether Ma speaks to me straight or does not. Because she'll be responding to the what's inside when I ask the question. It was no simple thing, but it certainly was a blessed thing. I can tell you this. So I am sorry to say I do not know of a single person that I could recommend that someone see. And that doesn't mean they're not there, because they are. Bharat will never lose its status as the treasure house of the spiritual treasure house of the world. And I know they're there, and they're not everywhere. My first trip to India, I was always within walking distance of a saint the whole 9 months. It was amazing. Bharat Mata just opened up the treasure chest and said, well, look, I've got this. And I'm confident they're there. But unfortunately, they're not in the YouTube public eye. You see, Ma would not allow anything to be put in the newspaper about her. Ma would not allow them to put even a notice in the paper saying, Anandamayi Ma is coming for such and such. No. It was mouth to mouth, devotee to devotee, knowledge as to where Ma was and as to where she was going to go. So Bharat Mata keeps her saints very close to herself. And she often doesn't let people know. I've known people who have said, I remember one monster said, I lived there for 3 years and traveled all over, and I didn't meet a single yogi even. Well, they were there because I traveled the same places she had traveled. But Bharat Mata said, it's not for you. Does that mean I'm special? Yes, it does. I received special grace and special love. It's not deserved, but it was special, yes. So there's not a single one I could recommend. Even recommend and say, why don't you go watch them and see what you think. Every one I have seen, I've thought, I don't see, personally, I don't see any value here. I'm sorry to say that. But they are there. And if you go and you really pray, you will find them, or they will find you. That has happened to me also. So I remember one time, a great saint, I was sitting on the railway platform, and this remarkable sadhu came up. And he just started speaking to me. He was speaking to me in Bengali. And people with me said, he doesn't understand Bengali. They said it 2 or 3 times. Each time he said, I know he doesn't understand Bengali, but I'm talking to him. Well, I was just filled with ananda, with bliss. It was so interesting. He stood there. He was up. I was sitting. He was above. Not supposed to sit in the presence of the saints, but there I was, and I'm looking at, and he was sort of had his head tilted, looking at me, and the joy that flowed, the ananda that just streamed out of him was incredible. And he talked, and then suddenly there was somebody banged a gong because the train was coming. He just stopped, turned, walked on. I never saw him again. I have no idea who he was, but he was there. He was there. Actually, I've just yesterday finished writing an experience about being in Vrindavan and seeing a little old man, all dressed in white, in a very traditional way, coming down the street. And I thought, now there is somebody. He doesn't have a remarkable appearance, but there's someone. And then it turned out, later on in that trip, I had a chance to see him, we might say, in action. And he was a phenomenal yogi, a phenomenal person. But didn't look, if I showed you a photo, you'd say, oh, he's just some little old man. But he wasn't. And a lot of people look like big saints and their eyes shine. Of course, have big marks, 3 things. They're a great big red tilak, they're there and they have all kinds of rigs, and, and so they're sitting there and it's all look. It's all form. There's no content. And then you can see people that nobody give a second look at if they were walking down the street. And they're great, great, great. But they only reveal themselves to those that they figure are not going to be a waste of time. There's that true. I mean, I've done this. I have foolishly taken complete ignoramuses or ignorami to meet Ma. I don't know where my mind was. And Ma just wouldn't even look at them. There was a great saint named Maitri Devi in Delhi. I foolishly, a couple of times, took what were seen to be Western seekers, and Maitri Devi would say, I don't speak English, I can't answer. And they say, well, we have questions, and she would say, she would say it in Hindi, you understand, I don't speak English. You should go to, and then she would name some spiritual organization that was geared for public consumption. But the thing was a bit embarrassing, is they would have these questions. She'd say, I don't speak English, I'm sorry, I can't. And then she would turn to me and in Hindi say, do you have any questions? So I shouldn't have, because why should I cheat? But I would say, oh, what is it you want to ask? And they would tell me in a song. And I would say, da-da-da-da, and Maharaj Devaji would give me a very full answer. I got the idea that I should not be bringing those people there, and so I didn't after a while. But it happened. So you understand, the treasure chest can be open or it can be closed. It can even be locked. So I've taken a long time on this, but they're there. You go look and find. But be careful, because it's easy to think you're finding something genuine that isn't. During the yoga boom, thousands of sincere young people were utterly deceived by the fake gurus. It was a horrible thing to see. And really, Ma told me, if they ask you to come speak, you've got to come speak, and you've got to speak plainly, and you've got to be courageous, and you've got to be firm. So some people escaped the clutches, but most people did not. And then it was all over, and now it's like Never happened. There was a time when these super gurus were going all around America. Okay, forgive me. All right, final one. What can you tell me about meditation sickness and how to overcome it? Never heard of that term in my life. If someone practices a form of meditation that makes them sick, then it's a fake yoga and it's dangerous. It's harmful. It shouldn't be done. Oh, I know there are people like, oh yes, I'm in such a high exalted state. I can't pay attention to practical matters. Oh yes, there was a fake Mataji back in the yoga boom, and she was really dumb. So if she was asked to give a talk, she'd say, and then she'd go and fall over. Oh, they would hold Mataji up and they'd say, oh, Mataji's in ecstasy. No, she wasn't. In fact, Mataji was one time one of these things, and the function was over. So they said to this one man who was involved in one of the yoga groups, a very sincere person who had enough sense to wake up, and he quit, but he was there. They said, oh, won't you help Mataji to the car? So she's like this. He's leaning on him, and he has to kind of push her along. And they come, outside. He gets down the stairs, and outside there's the car. And there was a step down at one point, and suddenly Mataji, who always talked like this, said, watch the curb, boy. So he just let go and backed up and said, I think you can make it on your own. So there is that. And yes, you over-meditate. There's no such thing with real meditation. If too much is detrimental, then even 10 seconds of it's detrimental and shouldn't be done. That is really the truth. Is it possible to go too far too fast? Oh, nonsense. Nonsense. Everything in spiritual life goes by divine law, and you can't go too fast and you can't go too slow. You either are going or you're not going. There's just go and there's stop. And am I opened up too much and so on? If you got a practice that does that, it's bad for you. Quit it. But if you like being a loony, a lot of people do, go ahead, have fun. Then what you can do is in about 4 or 5 years, you can quit the practice, find Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior, and get on the circuit, write a book, and make money and get attention by denouncing the demonic ways of Hinduism and yoga and how the Lord Jesus is the only way. Or just how this is psychologically unhealthy. In fact, I can take you to the so-and-so university, and the psychology teacher will explain to you how harmful these Eastern methods are for the Western psyche. No such thing as a Western or Eastern psyche. No, there's a shaping of the mind as Eastern and Western. And so it's nonsense. You cannot develop any health situations at all through real meditation. Because it's not physical, it works in the level where there's no sickness or health. It's beyond that. What can you tell about an intense meditation I had during which I felt infinite, true, unconditional love for the first and only time? And how do I get that feeling back now, all these years later? If it didn't show you itself the way to do it, then frankly, it was just a mood. And it has no lasting reality and no lasting value. That is the real truth. Don't lie to yourself. Go look in the mirror and say the truth. Self-honesty is where infinite wisdom begins for the human being. Okay, what happens to the soul after life? At afterlife, or in the afterlife? Well, through the years, people have said, what happens to the soul after death? There are whole books about it. Sivananda wrote a book about it. It isn't worth the paper it's printed on, much as I revere him. But he wrote a lot of things because he knew people were interested. And then they could get interested. They say, well, okay, but he would give some very true principles. And then they might regress to more and more. That was his way. That's fine. What happens to you after birth? Well, it happens different for everybody. So after death, it's all according to your karma, which you created. So you put in the programming, and then it plays out. So everything, no one goes beyond karma. So throughout physical embodiment and throughout out of the body embodiment, and it isn't very logical to call physical incarnation life. You can never die. You've always been alive. Everything is alive. This is alive, but it's alive in a different form. There is not a self-consciousness there. But because it's divine Shakti, it's God. My fingernail is God. But it doesn't lead to God. So you got to find the part of God that takes you to God. So some people go to sleep. I will say a little bit. Some people go to sleep, and then it's dreamless sleep. And then wham, somebody smacks them on the rear, and they've just been born. Other people go and have experiences in the astral world. There's all kinds of worlds, pleasant, unpleasant, meaningful, unmeaningful. It just depends on your karma. There are people that die and things stay just like they are. Now, they know they're not in the world anymore, but it looks just like this world. And they go around, and they have meals with people, and they sit there and talk, and they gossip and so on. And nothing is going on with these people spiritually. They are literally keeping right on with the dream hallucination they were in when they were back in the body. And then other people, they do have experiences, and they see higher worlds and so on. And the test of whether that's worthwhile is what's going to happen when they come back. What will their consciousness be? I don't mean to be rude at this, but this is really the truth. Anyone who claims to tell you what will happen to any one particular person is lying. Even if they're sincere and mean to be telling you the truth, they're not when they're telling you falsehood. That's a fact. The thing we have to think of, what has happened to me now in this life? What is going on with me? Most people, nothing is going on. They're just drifting along. They're sleepwalkers. About 2/3 of their life is just every day this and this and that. I've known people who were so mundane. There are people who love to tell you their dreams. Heaven knows why. And I knew a man that he would say, well, I dreamed last night that I went down the corner. I'm not exaggerating this. I went down the corner of the grocery store, and I walked up and down the aisles, and I was looking for so-and-so and so-and-so. He didn't even tell me a dream where something exciting happened, like a siren went off and there was a fire. He just kept doing in his dreams what he did in his daily life, which didn't amount to much. So, consciousness. The level of consciousness. Well, what do I do about my level of consciousness? meditate, 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 and I recommend Soham Yoga. That doesn't mean there aren't other beneficial and valid ways. But having done heaven knows how many, because I started at the age of 20, went from one ultimately pointless practice, an ultimately pointless teacher to another. And I had a long, long history of failures behind me until I was fortunate enough to find a website where there was a photograph of a man, black and white photograph, and then it changed to another pose, another pose, another pose. There were 4 photographs of this same person that just went in series. And it showed some color photos of where his ashes were, what everybody needs to know, right? And of course, in his kind of, shrine made and so forth. And that was kind of the end of it. And for then, I looked occasionally, and there was one where there were videos that showed some of the "Oh, great Guru, we adore you" rituals there in that shrine, where the people seemed to be half asleep. But one thing was there, and it was a PDF of a book. And unfortunately, like I saw the website, I was kind of interested, didn't bookmark it, didn't make any note. Took me 2 weeks to find it again. Then I remembered. And I downloaded that book. It had a lot of extraneous, in fact, it was a lengthy book, had a lot of extraneous history about not yogis and so on. But then it told about this man who was a great yoga siddha, a great yoga master, and it gave some of his teachings and so on. And it was amazing. And I thought, well, I've heard about this practice, but I always figured, it's just some kind of Vedantic thing. So let me try. And I tried. In 5 minutes, I thought, this is the thing. In fact, I said to myself, I love this. I felt so relieved, I can't tell you. And so I did it. Now, the book, there are 2 books that are the contents of that one book. One is called Light of Soham. It is the biography of Sri Gajanana Maharaj, which tells about him and has some of his teachings. But it's not a long book, but it's a substantial book. And then there's another one called The Inspired Wisdom of Sri Gajanana Maharaj. And that gives all of his teachings with explanations and commentaries for sections where people that aren't used to sort of the standard terminologies and concepts among the yogis of India. So those 2 are there. I don't have them here to show to you. But anyway, if you go onto our website, you can download them. Light of Soham and The Inspired Wisdom of Sri Gajanana Maharaj. And, we're just 5 minutes over an hour. It feels to me like I've taught much longer. I hope it wasn't so miserable that you feel it was longer. Of course, you're lucky you can always just do a Command Q. But anyway, thank you. Those of you who ask these questions, thank you. These are good questions. And my dear friend who asked the things about the unconditional love, please don't think I'm sneering at you and I'm fussing and rebuking at you, but please understand, although these are common ideas and common coin of the metaphysical, pseudo-spiritual ways here in America, they have no meaning, they have no value. And the thing about, if something can make you sick, then it's wrong. Or you are so wrong that you can't handle the positive side. Because I've known people like that. I have known people who have come into a group where they was singing of sacred songs, Sanskrit, kirtan. And out they'd go. They couldn't stand the vibration. Well, they were in trouble. I've mentioned about, people used to come to see Ma, the ease, the joy, the utter rightness you felt the moment you came in her presence. It was wonderful. And it made you self-aware. Didn't just make, oh, this great person. No. You began to feel your true self. And as I say, I have seen people come to see Ma and literally shed tears of relief because, everyone has problems in daily life, and they come for a breather, and they were just so relieved to see Ma. But then I met a very low, nasty person who said, oh, when I just walked in the door where she was, I felt like I was being suffocated. And after just 20 minutes, I had to get out and breathe. She was evil. She was truly evil. She was a vile person, actually. So there are also people that, those who are positive and normal, they ought to get sick if they come into contact with negativity. It's like their spiritual immune system warning you. I have opened pseudo-spiritual books where I've had like an agonizing headache in about 2 to 3 minutes because the vibration was so hellish and so evil. And I was reading the books because I had friends who were doing this practice. There was a fake guru, and I watched my friends fall to pieces psychologically because it was a hellish practice. So there are also bad meditation methods that can make you sick, but be very careful. But you can't over-meditate on the real one, and no one progresses too fast. That's just the tamasic lower life saying, I don't want to go there. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go higher. I like it here. Now I'll end with this. I knew a man who has a lot of wisdom. And he said, I often tell people that for many people, when they die, they find themselves just on a path. Grass is all around, but they find themselves on a path. And so they walk down the path, and finally they come to where the path ends, but there's 2 paths. One goes the right, one goes the left. And there are 2 billboards. And one says, to God, with an arrow. And the other says, to a discussion about God, with an arrow. And he said, almost everybody goes to the discussion instead of to God. So there are people who spend incarnations going to the discussion. I hope you don't think the satsang was one of them. Anyway, namaste, namaste, namaste. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Forgive my rambling ways and foolishness, but guess what? I don't have anything else. So, Brahmarpanamastu. This is offered to God and to the God in you.